I'm very excited about this.
Me too.
Yeah. So GiveDirectly is really interesting. And let's see, I'll describe it and then you'll be like, actually, Emily, this is how it works. But GiveDirectly basically operates from the premise of, to be effective, you literally give directly, you put cash into people's hands, they know what to do with it, and that is maybe the most effective way to do philanthropy. And ahead of this year, I would say, this idea was everywhere. You could not, you would trip over it anywhere you go, and people would talk about just give cash, just give money, universal basic income, everything, everywhere, all at once. It was just like, oh, we could just give people cash and that's it. And then, I don't know, something changed this year. Is it still the hot thing? We'll start there.
So you're absolutely right. GiveDirectly sends cash to people in poverty and crisis. We do what it says on the tin. It's unconditional, and it works. Hundreds, more than 1,000 studies at this point. So it's like unequivocally one of the most evidence-based, scalable, but also just dignified, because it is this radical act of centering power in the people who know what they need most. Kind of burst onto the scene 15 years ago as the result of two things. First, the advent of randomized controlled trials, which allowed the economists to basically say, hey, it turns out a lot of what we've been doing for the last 30, 40 years doesn't work. And it turns out, take what we were doing and how much it costs to do that and just give it to people. And it turns out that works better.
Yeah.
So that started to happen 15 years ago. The second thing that happened is the advent of mobile money. The diffusion of mobile phones across the world make it incredibly efficient to reach people now with digital cash. I actually disagree with you. I don't think that the kind of...
What? You don't?
I think it got a bunch of flashy attention at the start, but certainly from our perspective, we are about to have our largest year ever. More money is being kind of put through cash transfers than ever before,
Wow.
certainly through our pipes. And there's I think the reason though that you may see this, like, I don't know, it may be less in the headlines or a little bit less sexy than it once was, it's kind of a counterintuitive idea. We like to believe that we know better than the people that we're trying to support. Who's heard the idea, teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for a day, teach him to fish, he'll feed themselves for a lifetime. This is a very kind of intuitively attractive idea. It turns out there's no grounding in evidence for it whatsoever. Turns out, like, we're actually really bad at teaching people things. They don't retain it. Turns out that, like, maybe they don't need to fish. Maybe they want to start a bakery. Maybe they want to be a taxi driver. And so the idea that you have this, like, planned economy of bureaucrats saying this person needs a fishing rod and needs to learn how to fish, it just doesn't work. And so I think the kind of evidence is piling up over time, and we actually see a lot of momentum for increasing attention to cash transfers.
Let's talk about a specific example so people can really, like, grok what you do. I thought what happened earlier this year with the government shutdown, SNAP benefits were cut off for, millions of people. You heard a lot about give to food banks, give food to food banks, but you guys did your thing. So tell me sort of like how that all worked behind the scenes. Were you preparing for the shutdown ahead of time? How did it work?
So we work in both poverty and crisis contexts. And crisis means basically preparing the infrastructure to be able to move quickly when shocks happen, whether natural or man-made or political. And so what happened when the kind of SNAP kind of shutdown happened, we launched an emergency appeal. And we have a couple of partnerships in the technology world, particularly with an app called Propel. This is an app that people use to manage their SNAP benefits. That allows us to identify people who qualify for support in real time. These are the people who are most at need and who have large families and who are missing their benefits. And so what we were able to do is we ended up raising about $14 million and were able to distribute tens of thousands of payments a day to reach people as their benefits weren't paid. And now, I wouldn't say for a second that a $50 payment, it was a $50 payment, it was a stopgap measure at most for the most vulnerable families. There were a lot of people who didn't get help. And we need food banks and we need all of those things. But cash is uniquely fast and flexible. Like, we could get tens of thousands of payments out a day. We ended up paying more than almost 250,000 families in the course of about 10 days. And that could be used on anything from diapers to baby powder to infant formula to whatever that family needed, because it's really hard to identify what does one family uniquely need. Maybe the food bank doesn't have the infant formula,
Right, yeah. It faster than sort of like buying a bunch of groceries for someone, just zap them some cash and you're done, move to the next.
Absolutely.
Tell us, speaking of other challenges you had this year, I guess I also wanted to ask you, I mean, it's the vibe in the room everywhere in philanthropy now is the disappearance of USAID. And it's my understanding you lost $20 million this year?
Yeah, that's right. We're expecting to disperse about $20 million US to people across from Mozambique to Morocco to different parts of our work around the world. And like many others, that was kind of shut off without warning earlier this year.
So what'd you do?
Two things. We have kind of a principle as an organization that once we commit to someone that they're going to receive money to us, once we've communicated to them that that's going to happen, come hell or high water, like, we are going to make that happen, even if the funding source disappears. And so we had tens of thousands of people who were already expecting to receive money from that was funded by USAID that was no longer going to come through. And that's an incredibly dangerous thing, because if you're in extreme poverty, there's people living on less than $3 a day, incredibly vulnerable. They might have already made different decisions about how they live their life because of the expectation of this money. And so we felt like we had to find a way to make that real. We kind of dipped into some reserves. We did an emergency appeal. We were able to make all of those people whole. But we did have to make some operational adjustments. Like, we have ended up shutting down 2 countries that we were operating in. And I think that's unfortunately the kind of reality of operating in a very different world from where we were 12 months ago.
Right, because I mean, the federal governments and governments around the world pulling out of philanthropy, I would imagine it's not possible to replace all that money. Just even thinking about SNAP, it's not possible to fund SNAP privately. Like, SNAP is food benefit, everyone knows. Yeah. It's just not possible to do it.
Yeah, the contraction in funding in the international development and aid sector is extraordinary. It's a shockwave that we've never seen before. What I will say is, like, the kind of tragic situation is, I think that the impact of that is still cascading through in a lot of the countries that we're operating in, where supply chains are slowly drying up, where kind of hospitals are like suddenly finding that they don't have everything that they need, and there's no way to kind of improve that situation, and organizations every day kind of going under because they've been able to stretch it out until now. But the US was the largest funder in the world, and all of that money essentially disappearing overnight, $40–50 billion, there is no way that private philanthropy can fill that hole, let alone the fact that you have other governments like the UK and others who are also pulling back.
It's heartbreaking. I want to switch gears, something in the news today, and something I feel like you'll have a take on. Maybe people probably saw the news about these Trump accounts, which are, someone called it today at the press conference, 401ks for babies, which I think is hilarious. But basically, I mean, it's the federal government for the next few years, for babies born in 2025 through 2028, will get $1,000. And they'll be put in these investment accounts. They won't be able to touch it till they're 18. So I was wondering what you think of that kind of giving directly. Like, is that something your organization, because charity philanthropies can, make big, we saw today with Michael Dell, can make big donations to these accounts. So is that a direction you would move GiveDirectly into? Is that the best way to give kids money?
I don't know if I would say move GiveDirectly in that direction, but I would say a couple of things about this. The first is, I think we should all be thrilled at the Michael Dell gift that was made today. We need more billionaires signing multi-billion-dollar checks, not enough of them do it, and I think it's a huge deal. Like at a time when there is more private wealth than at any time in human history, like there is just not the urgency to kind of give the money away. And I hear from too many of the kind of ultra wealthy that it's kind of too hard, that there isn't the mechanisms to like find places for the money to be absorbed at sufficiently high qualities. I think that's bullshit, to be clear.
It's too hard to give money away.
It drives me crazy.
Sure.
But I think this is a really good example that we should hold up and we should celebrate, because we need more of the ultra wealthy signing checks that large. I do think mechanisms like this are uniquely able to absorb and effectively deploy money at that scale. There are very few interventions that you could credibly like sign a $6 billion check and kind of know that that was going to be distributed in a certain way. Now, I'm sure there was going to be thoughtful and important ways to get the program design right. I'm not going to comment on that because I haven't looked into it enough. But big picture, I think that's like really good.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I guess I was curious. I was talking to someone else in GiveDirectly before, and he mentioned you have a program in Michigan, but you're giving cash to mothers and children to be used now. I guess it's just a different.
Yeah.
It's a different mode of need.
Yeah, I think the theory, at least, behind those, the kind of the one that you were describing is like kind of wealth building over time. The program that you're referring to in Flint, Michigan, over the next 3 years, almost a third of new mothers will receive $1,500 from us a few months prior to giving birth, and then $500 a month for the first year of the child's life. And the reason for that is that that kind of moment, that first year of the child's life, that moment of pregnancy is a uniquely vulnerable moment in time. A little bit of cash at that moment has extraordinary benefits. We see everything from eviction rates decline by 90% plus, NICU admissions decline by 30%, just by this like small injection of cash at exactly the right moment in time. And so that's like a big focus for us, is like finding those critical moments in time in which the right little like nudge and support from other people can go a really long way.
So I wanted to ask you, one of the criticisms that you hear about giving cash is that it's uniquely susceptible to fraud. And I think in a piece I read in NPR about GiveDirectly, they sort of brought that up and said that was one of the reasons the Trump administration was sort of pulling back from doing things like that. And I know a few years ago, GiveDirectly did run into some trouble with $1 million being stolen. It was for families in the Congo. So I was wondering what you would say. Do you think that's what would you say about that? What have you done since then to prevent fraud?
Yeah, I actually think that out of all of the modalities of kind of aid, actually digital cash is, I think, the most secure. But to give a little bit more context here, so by 2030, the vast majority of the world's extreme poor are going to be living in places that have this intersection of extreme poverty, climate shock, and conflict. There's places like the Eastern DRC, and anyone who credibly wants to tackle the biggest problems in the world needs to be working in places like this. And these are incredibly hard operating environments, and we've kind of made a decision that with all of the risks involved, we want to be in places like that. And in several years ago, organised crime infiltrated our DRC team and diverted almost $1 million. Now, one of our principles as an organisation has been to be proactively candid. And so I got to say, it's a very terrifying thing to proactively disclose to the world without prompt, which is what we did. That this is something that had happened.
Yeah.
And so, you can imagine the kind of holding breath as you send the email and put out the press release, hey guys, look at what happened. And I will say, the thing that is really remarkable to me, when I talk to our donors, and many of them have only increased their gifts over time, I said that is the moment where they grew to trust the organisation the most, because of our level of proactiveness around disclosing these things. Now, most organizations, things like fraud, it's kind of the dirty secret that no one talks about. The kind of general estimates in the space are about 5% of resources end up getting diverted. We have internal benchmarks that we want to stay below 0.05%. In that year, where we lost $1 million, it went up to 1%, and we've never been that high ever since. So I feel really good, actually, about cash and its ability to be tracked, to be traced, to be secure end to end. I can literally trace a dollar from the bank account in New York all the way into someone's hands in Eastern DRC in Congo. And for the vast majority of other interventions, you just can't do that. There's so many middlemen along the way, and there's so much leakage, unintentional sometimes, but yeah.
All right, well, we're pretty out of time, but I want to leave on a high note. So not asking you about fraud, being mean to you.
That is a high note, honestly.
Yeah, it's fine. That was pretty. No, it all turned out great. Yeah. So, but you told Time Magazine that the world needs more moonshots. What do you mean?
Yeah. So I think one of the big tragedies of the social good space is there's so many incentives towards incrementalism. Failure is punished. That like everything that's like easily measured is kind of rewarded over and over again. And so we've tried to engineer or GiveDirectly to be able to take moonshots, audacious bets. There's two really big ones that we're focused on. One is national scale poverty interventions, where we're actually working towards aiming to lift a really large proportion of people in Malawi out of poverty. We think it's going to cost somewhere between $4 and $6 billion. At the moment, we're in the phase of scaling up to state level. Every single person in a state is receiving a cash transfer from us one time. It's going to cost a couple $100 million over the next 18 months or so. And we think the world needs more bets that can credibly claim to absorb and effectively deploy money in that range. The second is kind of crisis response. The humanitarian crisis response system is like broken, it's slow, there's logistics, there's conflict, all sorts of things. And taking a technology first approach on that to basically get cash into the hands of anyone who experiences crisis within days, anywhere in the world, is the other big moonshot that we're working on.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you doing this. And thanks to all of you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.